What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video we are doing the 92nd installment of Retro Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing my Gemini Jets 1:400 scale American Eagle Embraer ERJ-145. I remember using this vividly in many airport updates when I first started doing them regularly in around 2020. I did one in late 2019, the first of what became about 20 or so Skippy Town updates before that airport was discontinued a couple years after the fact, since I wanted to move on to just the real-life airports. But at some point I'll bring back a fictional airport. Whether or not it will be Skippy Town is to be determined, but that is in my plans to do so at some point. Maybe I'll try to do it in 2026, depending on what my life looks like by then. But this is a model I've had for over 6 years. I acquired this at the Greyland Station store in Chicago, which is the massive die-cast model airplane and train store that you can find in the suburb called Devon. And I went there when I visited Chicago just on a little weekend getaway and got a couple models from there. Should have gotten more, but I was very much constrained with what budget I had back then. But it is of my goal to go back the next time that I visit Chicago. Kind of wish we had more time when we passed through there a couple months ago, but we were just more focused on getting some plane spotting in rather than the model buying, since that trip was, of course, part of Airliners International, where all the model buying happened. So we'll move to the box here. This is one that's been in storage, so I had to give it a little bit of a clean since it was quite dusty. But this is just a standard Gemini Jets box with the every little detail there featured. There's the inside with the plastic cradle and everything, along with the aircraft pamphlet. You can pause to read this information. And then the bottom of the box has the Gemini advertising. There's the right side of the box. Item number is GJAAL 1565. The top of the box, which still has a part of the price sticker. I don't know how much this was. I think it was somewhere in the 30s. This is back before models became really expensive, which, you know, the prices, they just keep raising up because just a wide variety of factors, really, ranging from just a general inflation in the economy to rising production costs, shipping costs. There's a bit of everything that's going on with that, so that's why the prices have been going up, mainly on Gemini Jets' end, but I know other manufacturers, their prices have also been trickling up as well. Back of the box, this is labeled as a 2017 release, released in November, so pretty late. Likely right around when Envoy Air was just starting to retire, getting rid of these older livery Embraer aircraft, because they had a lot of the 145s, and then there were some 135s and 140s that were floating around, I think up until about 2020, before they finally got rid of them, and then we had no more older livery American Eagle aircraft until the Retro 170 came around a few years ago. So bring this model into view, and I will say that the engines, they are just loosely attached. I've had occasions where one of the engines has fallen off and then I have to put it back in there. I have not glued the engines into place. I should do that just so I don't have a scenario where if I do have an engine fall out, then I would end up losing it permanently. So I don't want that to happen, because this is still a model I would love to use, especially for retro FSD and maybe a modern classic airport if I were to do something like that in the future. But this is still a very useful model. As I said at the start, this was the one that I used most often until Gemini Jets re-released a new livery, or current livery now, Embraer 145 that I picked up. That one a Piedmont example. This one was an Envoy example for much of its life. So as we begin with the review, we'll note all of the model deficiencies that come with such tiny aircraft. And the first thing you'll note is the nose gear there, just a little strut with no details. As I mentioned in that CRJ 200 review last week, some of these details have to be compromised in smaller scale, because if you make it very detailed, it's going to be very brittle and it will break easily. But there's the nose cone with the nose gear door. It does have a fleet code printed on there. Cockpit windows, L1 door, and there is what looks to be a sticker of some sort, might be American flag. Also tiny little Embraer titles right there. American Eagle titles right above the passenger windows. And then that takes us to the one little overwing exit door. November 639er Alpha Echo is your aircraft's registration. There's the engines on there, the AE 3007s I believe they are. and then there is the American Eagle tail. And then bringing it around to the other side, that was kind of an unintentional transition there with my hand blocking the camera. There's the right side with little panel details right along the wing joint there, and everything else as needed. There's a little APU there, which is angled upward away from the aircraft. And then we flip it underneath. There's the Gemini Jets logo with the stand hole and all the details printed on there. And the top, not too much to report on there, which is the beacon light, no antennas, since the 145 is so tiny. Even if they did have antennas, it'd probably be hard to replicate that properly in 400 scale. So that is the review for this aircraft. And now I'll spend a few minutes just talking about Envoy Air and everything, because this actually started as American Eagle Airlines. That was their original branding when they started in 1984. Several other regional carriers merged into American Eagle Airlines, the likes of Flagship, Wings West, Business Express, or Bex, and Executive Airlines all merged in here. And there's also Simmons, which I've covered in my timetable videos before. That had started in 1985 with Eagle service, and then acquired in 87 with service ending in 98. So that had actually merged with Flagship and Wings West, and that formed American Eagle Airlines. And then in 2014, then American Eagle rebranded to Envoy Air. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of the American Airlines group, and American Airlines helps just pay for everything that the airline needs to have, such as staffing, the aircraft, and all that fun stuff. So, very fascinating airline, and it's interesting now that they just go by the Envoy branding as of today. So now let's take a look at the real-life aircraft's history. First flew in 1999, then delivered to American Eagle Airlines in October of 99. And that would be the case for her for the rest of her career mostly. As mentioned, Envoy became the new branding for American Eagle Airlines in 2014, so just the name change there. She went to Piedmont Airlines in January of 2018, keeping her existing registration. She was put into storage in May of 2023, though I don't know if they've scrapped her at all yet or what they're going to do with it, but it was painted into the new livery prior to, and it actually looks like, well, it was supposed to fly in early August between Dayton and Charlotte and Washington, Reagan, and Savannah, but both those have been canceled, presumably since this aircraft is still in storage somewhere. But it was given the new livery after this old livery had been essentially retired. So that is the latest update that I have on this aircraft. And that'll do it for this episode of Retro Reviews. With that being said, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.